Welcome to Join the Conversation. I'm Jason Olbourne. I'll be hosting this panel today. I'm running for the seat of Paterson in New South Wales, and joining me on the show today, I've got Quinton Cunningham, who's running also for the UAP for the seat of Blair. Joining from the same seat is Liz Suduk down there for One Nation, as you can see. Crossing over, you'll see BJ Murray. She's running for UAP in Robertson. And below at the bottom of the screen, if that's how it's looking to you at home, you're seeing Michelle Wilde running in Queensland for the seat of Lilley for One Nation. And then you're going to meet Matthew Hopkins. He's running for Great Australia Party in the New South Wales Senate. So we're crossing the eastern seaboard here today, and we're going to bring you a whole range of topics. And I'm just going to introduce those topics for you right now. So we're going to touch on, obviously, the mandates as we move out of the first big long phase of COVID, and we're going to ask questions about where we look like we're headed and going to get the opinions of the panel. Then we're going to talk about this new revelation that hydroxychloroquine all of a sudden is allowed to be used by doctors. This is a big change in what's happening out there. Then we're going to talk about the digital ID, which is really, really important for all of us. We're going to get onto some pet topics in the middle from each of our candidates. We're going to discuss preferential voting, which is really, really, really important as you realize that you no longer want to vote for the major parties. How are you going to make your vote count? And then we're going to get into some other subjects such as mental health and the economy. It's going to be jam-packed. I tell you what, it's going to be a whole lot more interesting than watching anything on mainstream news. And I'll tell you what, Sky News, you better watch out, because this is a lot better than what you're putting out there as well. So I'm going to start with Liz as one of the regulars on Join the Conversation. Welcome to the show. Can you please tell us a little bit about your background as we get everyone warmed up to realize that they are in for an absolute treat today?
G'day, Jason. My name's Liz Suduk. I am ex-New South Wales police officer. I was mounted police, worked all over New South Wales. I have been farming for the last 20 years. We did the drought and survived, not with many animals, I might say. And I couldn't watch what was happening to our country any longer. So that's when I put my hand up and said, can I run for a seat for Pauline Hanson's One Nation?
Absolutely fantastic, Liz. This is what we're loving about Australians today, just putting their hand up and realizing a sense of duty for the big picture. Michelle, also running for One Nation. Please tell us how you ended up in the seat of Lilley.
Well, similar to Liz's story, my background is I was a corporate lawyer for 8 years, and I've run my own small business as a real estate agent in Brisbane for the last 14. I have 4 children, so I couldn't work big corporate hours anymore. I had to move on to, and I love small business, and I'm a big supporter of small business. So what I was seeing in the last 2 years was just a horrific waste and decimation of small business owners, particularly in hospitality, and I couldn't sit idly by. And I spoke to my husband, and he said, well, you need a seat at the table. And I thought, the only seat I want is with Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts. And so I contacted them, and here I am.
Wonderful, Michelle. I look forward to hearing more from you throughout this conversation. BJ, please tell us how you've arrived.
Yeah, well, look, I put my hand up originally when they asked for candidates. And at the time, I was employed by a local NGO as an operations manager, managing mental health programs. And I really actually thought that I would escape the mandates because I wasn't working for New South Wales Health, even though I'm employed as a registered nurse. I hadn't actually seen a client for 2 years. So there was absolute no risk. We know there's none anyway, but from a corporate point of view, there was absolutely no risk. But it turned out that I wasn't going to escape the mandates. And actually the day that I got told I was in the top 3 for this position for Robertson as a candidate was the day I got told my position was mandated. So it was a very interesting glass door moment of one closing and one opening. And then I got the position, and I had to leave my previous job, which I loved, in January. So yeah, so here I am, opening another door, exciting door, and I feel passionate about the mandates and what they're doing to our country.
Good on you, BJ. And what we're seeing straight away is the way that we're going to move forward in all of this, and that is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. I could not be more prouder than sitting amongst all of my friends here today, realizing that this is what we all believe in. It's obvious. Matthew Hopkins, Great Australia Party, please tell us about your journey that you've arrived here as a Senate candidate in New South Wales.
Thanks, Jason. Sorry, mate. I was just trying to get myself off mute. So I've been with GAP since 2019, since the party formed, 3 weeks prior to the previous federal election. I've maintained my input into GAP. I'm a practicing solicitor, and so lawmaking and the use of the law is very important to me. I've been involved in a number of actions against mandates and particular health officers, etc. And it's very difficult to fight the government. So what we need to do, the people need to become the government, because currently we are being managed, we're not represented. So I maintain my candidacy with GAP. And what's important to me, while we do have a chance of picking up some of the seats, what's important to me is to get these ideas out into the conversation, because we've all come from different backgrounds, fresh thinking, fresh ideas, and with the the galvanising effect of this assault on democracy, we certainly form to broadcast our ideas. That's what motivates me.
Absolutely, Matthew. I couldn't agree with you more. And the idea that you're seeing very, very qualified people here who, if they were wearing the original establishment colours, would all be very well received into those communities and accepted to become the next member of Parliament in those different areas. But we're wearing different colours now. And the beautiful thing is that we're not beholden to anyone anymore. We get to run our own races and show what we really believe in. Quinton, welcome to the show. Tell us a bit about your background.
G'day, I'm ex-Army Special Forces. I was in the Army for 8 years. Once I discharged in 2014, I went back to Afghanistan and then Iraq for 7 years contracting to Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. During that time, I spent most of my time overseas, and I got to look at Australia from the outside, and I could see it back then becoming a country I didn't want to live in. So I was actively looking for somewhere overseas to live. Once COVID sort of impacted the world, I came back to Australia, actually got COVID in hotel quarantine, and then quarantined for about 26 days. I had 0 symptoms. And I've thought, okay, well, if I'm going to be here now, I need to be one of the people to put their hands up to try and change something. So it's funny that BJ actually said that she got the call when one door is opening and one door is closing, because that's pretty similar what happened to me. I'm doing emergency response and rescue in the coal mines now, and to enter site, I needed to be vaccinated. The day I was about to walk in to get my first jab, I got the call from the UAP team saying that you've got the candidacy. So it was, it's one of those moments that made me take pause and really think, and I'm really happy to be where I am right now.
What a great set of stories, Quinton. That's just, yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? That this is how it's almost divinely sanctioned in a way that these things are just happening almost miraculously. My background's a little bit different. I have been around politics for a very, very long time as an observer. I was a member of the Australian Labor Party. I was a member of the Hemp Party. For very, very different reasons, and what the Hemp Party was able to offer my mother, who was a nurse, a career nurse, who got terminal heart cancer, cardiac angiosarcoma, her specialist at North Shore, who was her friend, said to her, look, you've got 3 months tenure, that's all you're going to get. And I said, Mum, I've just discovered this idea about medicine and cannabis for cancer. Would you like to have a look? She said, I'll try anything. She was 66 years of age. We were able to get some advice and get her that medicine. And she got 11 and a half months, of which 11 of those, she had no side effects from the experimental chemo that they convinced her to take, where they said you'd be very, very sick for the entire week after each treatment. She had no side effects whatsoever. The tumor shrunk for a period of time. It certainly allowed her to live her life well before she fell off a cliff in those last 2 weeks. But the culmination there was that she got to meet her new grandson, which was an extraordinary thing to happen just by being able to buy time. So it was the ultimate thing in terms of that. But for mine, I thought in 2016, I said, you can't win without resources in politics. And I retired basically from that point of view. I got seriously back into media, was a TV producer. I've been following this very, very closely since 2016, but knew that I'd never run again. And it wasn't until last year that my wife said to me, she said, you are qualified and you need to pick a party. And it's clear that the United Australia Party is calling you. So I'm joining. And she said, I want you to join. And that's how it started. And here I am. And I think that this is a call of duty, a call to action for all of us. And as hard as it is to be a candidate when you give up a lot, I mean, we're all doing this for no salary. We're generally putting in our own money to do this. So this is a lot. You put your money where your mouth is. You're doing it for very, very high ideals. And I'm delighted that I'm not only sitting here with my 6 colleagues, or the 6 of us today, but there are many, many dozens of people that we've met on the run here, and we're only getting bigger and stronger. And the way that we're working is just extraordinary. And so what I'd like to do now is let's kick off with something that we're all very, very passionate about, and that is mandates. Liz, coming back to you, let's hear from you the latest on what's happening in mandates in terms of Queensland, please.
Well, in my opinion, the Queensland government only extended their mandates, I think it was 10 days ago. So the state of emergency that we all said there is no emergency. And they extended them anyway. I went to a number of protests outside Parliament House in Brisbane. I saw Michelle, she was there. Jason Miles was there from the Gap, and stacks of other candidates and just thousands of people, not that it was reported. Anyway, she extended them anyway on 2 occasions. There was a 2-part legislative procedure. They extended the first one, that it was going to fall over without the second. So she extended the second one. This is Anastasia Palaszczuk's government. And then a week later, she's relaxed some of the mandates. So that was only announced, I think it was yesterday. How convenient, before the election has these mandates been dropped, and but the state of emergency is still in place. So that's until at least, one said June, one said October. Why would you extend it if you weren't going to pull it into play in the next few months after the election? The Human Rights Commission actually wrote a piece when they asked for submissions, the government asked for submissions, and it looked great in the first couple of pages. It said, oh, we don't like these mandates. We think they're draconian. We think they're an overreach. However, further in the policy, further in the document, you found where they were suggesting that we follow Victoria's lead and actually make it legislation so that they can control their people. Now, when I was doing Stand in the Parks a couple of weeks ago, or months ago now, and Canberra was looking at doing these legislative changes, they are the most awful piece of legislation. Anywhere, anytime, they can disband a group of people for any reason. When I was a cop, you needed powers to do this. You can't just go and move people on. You needed a law or legislation to do this. That's what they're trying to do. And they've done it in Canberra, they've done it in Victoria, and now the Human Rights Commission up here is saying we should do it in Queensland as well. It's not good enough. People shouldn't be treated like this.
Michelle, to follow on, please.
It's just so disappointing. It's really hard to work out the motivation of our government. Obviously, we probably all feel that they need their powers extended for this period of time, but they're trying to relax them so that people can conveniently forget in the next few weeks until the federal election is over. I just am really hoping that anyone listening will not forget what this government has done to families, small business, mental health, our economy. They need to be punished and they need to be put out. Yeah.
That's okay. But BJ, over to you for your comments on these mandates, please.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've just been trying to find a previous Facebook post that I did, but I can't find it because I was going to list a few things in my area. So I feel like the public perception is that things are settling down, going back to normal, all that, but it's really not. But it's just that it's not being talked about. There's so many places that are actually still mandating. I mean, Woolworths just sacked thousands of people recently. There's actually businesses that are mandating a booster, and so more people will be losing their jobs. It's not normal at all. It's actually ramping up. And I had a list of about 20 organisations in my area on the Central Coast that had just started mandating and were continuing to mandate. And when people saw it, they were shocked, because it's like we have this perception that things are going away and things are settling down and going back to normal, but it's not. They're ramping it up. And for whatever reason that they have, and whatever motivation, it doesn't really matter about the motivation. All we know is that they want more control and they're always trying to get more control. And that's not what we want. We want to get government out of our lives and talking with us, not to us. So yeah, that's my position.
Matthew. Not sure if you're on mute.
Yes,
there.
no,
Yep.
yeah, it takes me a couple of seconds to unmute. The mandates, I think the starting point really is, are they reasonable? Are they necessary? And quite clearly they're not. All the evidence shows that if there was a dangerous virus, the reasoned response would be to protect the vulnerable, not to crash an economy, not to wreak havoc on small business. That's what's happened. Big business has grown. Small business has borne the brunt. Households, under pain of losing employment and income, have been forced to take an experimental injection. The evidence really is starting to skip away on any argument that mandates, lockdowns, these ridiculous mask mandates, or injection mandates, the evidence has skipped so far from these being anywhere near reasonable, rational, or a considered response. And the question is why? Well, what ordinarily would happen is you would protect your vulnerable, and to protect your vulnerable, you may let them isolate themselves, but you certainly wouldn't decimate your health system by firing anyone that refused to take an experimental injection. So that's the starting point. Why? That's open to speculation. What can we do about it? Well, you know, a good friend of mine, Tony, who's also with the UAP, he got out there in the dark days of New South Wales lockdowns, and he was letting everyone know that they weren't alone and just to hold the line. And that line resonated around the world.
Yeah.
Now, holding the line doesn't have a temporal aspect to it. We have to hold this line into it's intergenerational. That's what we need to do. We need to protect this idea of personal sovereignty, personal responsibility for health, because what we've done is handed, literally just capitulated to the state almost owning your health decisions. So that's what I've got to say about mandates.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I just want to, before I throw to Quinton, I just want to make the point about the Barrington Declaration, the idea that we protect the elderly, the infirmed, the weak, was the idea that this came up very, very long ago, as early as March 2020, when it was first touted by Dr. Shiva over there in the United States. Quinton, your thoughts on mandates?
Yeah, everyone brought up some great points, and I just wanted to sort of build on what Michelle and Matthew both said, because what I was going to say, can link it together. But the easing of restrictions in people's minds, people are forgetting, sadly. Michelle was saying that she hopes people aren't forgetting, but they are. And that's what, we're all saying. The UAP slogan is freedom, freedom, freedom forever. And this is what Matthew said. Our fight is intergenerational. It's not just freedom now, it's freedom forever. We've got to make sure these mandates and restrictions don't come back, because the government's taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and people are seeing the step back now and they're going, oh wow, this is great. I got my freedom back. But all the R&D and the money they put into developing, check-in applications, that's not going away. They're not just going to shelve that or bin that technology. They're going to keep using it. I was thinking back the other day, how did that all start? We've been, well, not me, because I haven't been on Facebook in a long time, but the check-in feature on Facebook has been there forever. And it's the same words, and it's sort of become, people's second nature. Oh, I'll just check in here because it's fun and I'm at the pub, and now my mates will come down and see me. So people are forgetting. And on with the mandates, people are saying to me also, well, what are you campaigning for freedom for? The restrictions have gone. I've got members and people who still talk to me. They're still out of work because of their mandates. I've got police officers, first responders, paramedics, defense. I've got hospital workers who all are still out of work because of mandates. And you want to talk about restrictions, you can't go into an airport without wearing a mask or get on a plane. But if you go to the food court, and we all know it, you can take your mask off, totally normal. Hospitals, if you're unjabbed, you can't go to a hospital. There's still restrictions, and there's still mandates locking people out of their lives.
Yeah, it's a whole new thing, isn't it, when you realize that just because you're okay, that the system is still broken. I want to make this comment about the mandates. I met with someone at the weekend who was working for a big company in my electorate of Paterson. So we're talking, mining and turning into processing with metals. And he's saying that they are still mandating for a booster now in New South Wales. And the reason that they gave, what the CEO was scared of being sued, if you can believe that. And I made this point that Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, came out some time ago and said we have to invent a new vaccine for Omicron because the virus has mutated, which means that the spike protein that comes out of the original vaccine that's meant to make the antibody lock into it is now deformed. It's mutated. So the current vaccine doesn't fit. So you're now being forced to take a vaccine that has one purpose, which is to make this antibody like this great big miracle of medicine, and it doesn't even work. And then we saw Bill Gates's comment, which, by the way, got me banned on Facebook and about 19 other punishments from that decrepit organization, when he said that Omicron has outperformed the vaccine now. Sadly, everyone remembers that one. Well, that got me 3-day bans. It got me lower in the news feed for 2 separate occasions, one of them indefinitely, not allowed to invite friends, not allowed to advertise, just for sharing Bill Gates, who, by the way, is the guy that funds the fact checkers. So yeah, well, let's get into that one at another stage. But continuing on now, if anyone has any further comment that they want to do, please just raise your hand in advance so we can race through. We just want to keep this going. Matt, go on.
Matt, you're muted.
Yes. Look, the people are being coerced, forced to taking injection, now boosters, that they simply don't want to have under threat of losing their jobs. Now, I said before, the evidence has skipped away, but the Fair Work Commission has been finding that directions for a vaccine or a booster or whatever are lawful and reasonable. Now, I believe that is vulnerable, very vulnerable right now. Reasonable because the evidence has skipped away and showing that these vaccines do not work. And then you've got the threshold of danger that the virus poses. But the other thing I want to tell people is, if don't give your the person that's forcing you, don't give them the free information. Okay. So a lot of people are saying, no, I'm not going to have the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. That's playing into their hands. That's consenting to the employer using their protected information. So I would just say to people, don't give them that information. And if another person deals with, records, or otherwise uses your protected information, then that's potentially a criminal offence. So what we've been doing is probably giving a free kick to the schoolyard bullies. And here's a strategy. It might not work for everyone. It's just a general one. Don't give them that information to act upon, and you might buy yourself some time, and you might give them pause to consider their position.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Matt. I just want to go on now to one of my pet subjects, and I know that the panel here would like to talk about it, and this is of the subject of hydroxychloroquine. This is a drug that obviously first was mentioned by President Trump way back when at the beginning as being effective. He was mocked, ridiculed, vilified, and immediately Fauci covered up the fact that for SARS-CoV-1, they were using the original chloroquine, which was a much stronger drug with great success, but then they tried to tell us that it wasn't the same thing, which was also turned out to not be true. So it was Dr. Zev Zelenko that was using that first up, and he had a protocol whereby he was treating people who he said only were high risk. In other words, they came in and he asked them a series of questions, and he assessed their health status, whether they were old, whether they were unwell, and he asked them a series of questions about their symptoms, and he said, have you lost your sense of taste? And he said, as soon as they said yes, he says, you are going to test positive on a PCR for a COVID. So what we're going to do is we're going to put you on our prophylactic treatment straight away, which was hydroxychloroquine, 20 milligrams for 10 days. It was zinc, 25 milligrams, I believe, and it was vitamin D, and I think it was 10,000 international units as the basis of that treatment. And what they found was that out of 3,000 people that he had treated at this point, 2,997 in early COVID survived. And specifically, he said 3 people only died. He said one had advanced cancer, another person was quite elderly in age, and he says in the third one, we don't know why, but we just lost him, unfortunately. He was then asked a year later about long COVID, and everyone was talking about, oh, long COVID, bad, bad, bad. And they said, Dr. Zelenko, what is your success rate on long COVID, given you've treated all these people? How many patients have got long COVID? And you know what his answer was? 0. Not one person using the hydroxychloroquine triple protocol got long COVID. So we're in Australia now, and we find out that the TGA banned this drug. It was fines or prison was threatened if a doctor prescribed it. But we've since learned that there's been a new development, and it's probably after this study came out in Australia saying that it was effective, that Craig Kelly from UAP was onto. But Liz, what do you now know about hydroxychloroquine specifically as it hands in Queensland?
Well, it was Michelle who actually told us about the
Yes, it was.
The drug this morning that has had its decriminalisation. And as it seems to be for Queensland Health, when they want something pushed out there, everyone gets on board, and it goes to the newspapers, it goes to all the internet, everywhere. When they don't want something pushed out there, it just sneaks away, and it doesn't actually get pushed out there. So I think the dates you said, Michelle, were a little bit back in March, but it was actually decriminalised on the quiet. What I find offensive is that the TGA banned a drug that hadn't been fully investigated. I'm not sure why they did, but if it had the effect that they're saying it may have, or had the ability to save lives, why on earth were we prevented from actually accessing it, or in the doctors preventing from actually prescribing the actual drug? I think there is some serious questions that need to be asked in relation to who gagged the doctors, who controlled the doctors. These are our health professionals and they're highly trained people. So why on earth have we got bureaucrats telling them what they can and can't use?
I can speak to that, Liz, if you like. So early on, I was learning in February 2020 in several countries like France, where you could buy ivermectin over the counter, before COVID was even mentioned in world news, that they were banning that drug, not just taking it off the over-the-counter purchase like you would aspirin, that it was completely banned and criminalised from use. And when I saw that happening in Australia, I did a lot of research into that particular drug, and I personally used it. I had COVID, or look, people say, oh, how do you know you had COVID? You didn't get tested. Well, I have never been jabbed. I've never been tested, but I had COVID-like symptoms. And within 12 hours, I started taking hydroxychloroquine. I took it for 3 days. And from the first day when I went to sleep for 17 hours, I bounced out of bed at 8 a.m. the next morning. So it works. I was able to get it from a friend of mine. I would have used ivermectin, but I gave it to a UAP candidate who had been jabbed and injured. So I'd previously given that to her and said, use my ivermectin when you have, just as a prophylactic, because it does treat injuries from the vaccine. So the reason why they have banned all of this is because, and I was saying this in early 2020 when I knew there was a vaccine, they couldn't have an easily accessible, cheap drug on the market, because that would have not allowed them to bring in the emergency use authorization of these vaccines, which we now know don't work, are in fact very dangerous, not safe, not effective. So unfortunately, what's happened in the last, not even 12, or coming up to 12 months when people started getting vaccinated, there are so many people who are injured, disabled, died. It's horrific. And unfortunately, they're saying 90-something% have done it to themselves. I'm questioning those numbers, but yeah, that's an unfortunate situation where people find themselves in. And some people say, well, I've not been affected. Well, that's great, but we don't know the long-term effects of that drug. We don't know if they cause cancer or any future health issues. So that's why they silence doctors, because if doctors had been able to discuss within themselves and to their patients that they could prescribe ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, which work, I've taken them myself, and as have, you spoke to Jason, Dr. Zelensky, is it, who's treated Trump?
Dr. Zelenko, yep.
Zelenko, yeah, I've heard him speak many times too on social. That's why they had to silence the doctors. They had to withdraw hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, because they had to push through their emergency use authorization of these dangerous and ineffective vaccines. And I feel very bad for people who have had them, and they should not have any more. And they need to stand up and say no.
Yeah.
Yep. Well said, Michelle. BJ, you've got a comment?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say that, because of being in the nursing and the medical field for a long time, hydroxychloroquine is actually a drug that's been previously used and still used for autoimmune diseases. So the demonization of these drugs is so ridiculous for people in the know. And I'm just still shocked that more nurses and doctors haven't stood up and told the truth, and they are gagged by AHPRA and our professional bodies. But hydroxychloroquine is used for rheumatoid arthritis, for lupus. Ivermectin won the Nobel Peace Prize for one of the most used and safest drugs on the globe. It's been used 3.7 million times. So the demonization is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I just don't understand why it's not more well known. People are just, they're brainwashed with these things, and they only see what the mainstream media wants to tell them.
So they are criminal, and they should be prosecuted as well.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, well said, BJ. And I do like it when a lawyer says that they need to be prosecuted, and we have an ex-policeman or policewoman in the room with us, and she's not saying no. So this is very, very strong rhetoric from all of us here that we're well aware of what's going on. I had occasion to speak to a doctor on the weekend, and I asked her, why don't the GPs organise and just go on strike for a week? And she said, because we're that scared, and that is no way to run a country where your GPs, your doctors can't be doctors anymore. Now, Matt, have you got a comment on hydroxychloroquine?
Yes, Jason, I do, mate. What I'd like to do is put a little bit of context around hydroxychloroquine, the banning of, and the amount of money that was spent on vaccines. Now, in early 2020, hydroxychloroquine was thrown into the poison schedule of the Therapeutic Goods Act. Now, the reasons why, I'll just read it off the screen. It admits that hydroxy is a substance that has been used in medicines for the prevention and treatment of malaria, arthritis, and other conditions. And recent studies have indicated that hydroxychloroquine may have potential in the treatment of COVID-19. Okay, that's in the reasons of putting this in the poison schedule now to reach people. It goes on to say, recent reports of increased prescribing of hydroxychloroquine has raised concerns regarding potential shortages. So this was made unavailable for fears that supply for people that were already using this, what is admitted as a treatment for COVID-19. Then you consider how much was spent, how many billions has been spent on vaccines. And then you weigh those two up and you say, is that good governance?
No.
Is it? No, it's not. It's appalling. And it leads one to there's only one conclusion that one can make here, and that there's a coordinated agenda globally to get people jabbed. So where we go next, I don't know. Another thing that concerns me is SARS-CoV-2 is a coronavirus. Coronaviruses are very, very common, and Quinton touched on it before about semantics and people getting used to certain words like check-in, but now we're used to locking down for a coronavirus. Yeah. So what kind of Orwellian dystopia are we being corralled into here? Yeah. But I just thought it might be interesting to weigh that huge spend on something that doesn't work. And let's not forget that the big pharmaceutical companies make donations to our politicians. Yeah. Right. And here we have a cheap and effective treatment, not a failed preventative medical good. So a little bit of context I think might be helpful.
Yeah, no, well said. Yeah, go on, BJ.
There, and just to bring it back to, UAP, one of our main policies is to restore that doctor-patient relationship. So I think that's really important for people to realise that it's a big statement, but and that could mean a lot of things, but basically it would mean that doctors are able to prescribe on the presentation of their client, not of their patient, not from what bureaucracy says. And I've had that complete situation where I thought I might be able to get an exemption to the vaccine from my specialist, and by the time I could get to see him when I was going through with my work situation was like 3 months down the track, and I finally got to see my specialist, and he said that he was giving out exemptions at the beginning of the lockdowns and COVID, but he had actually been told by the AMA that he wasn't allowed to anymore to give out an exemption. It was absolutely ridiculous. So in his medical notes, he has written that I should not have the vaccine due to medical conditions, but he's not able to give me an exemption. So, and this is a specialist in chronic fatigue syndrome. He's a worldwide specialist, and he's been hampered from doing what he thinks is best for his patients by the AMA and by bureaucracy.
It's madness, isn't it, that the same doctor can prescribe synthetic heroin to anyone without any requirement, but can't say you can't have a vaccine that's experimental. You've just got to have it. Quinton, your thoughts on hydroxychloroquine?
I've got some good thoughts, but I just wanted to touch on what Matthew said. That words such as lockdown is definitely going to be sticking with us now, and I'm concerned that we're going to have climate lockdowns in the future.
Yeah.
You know, what happens when that comes back into the conversation? Oh, you know, it's for the greater good. Just do your part. That kind of stuff. So I'm concerned we're going to go into climate lockdowns or any supply chain issues or lack of food and fuel. It's like, okay, well, now we'll go without. We'll just, you know, you'll lock every second house. You know, if you've got an odd or even numbered letterbox, you'll just lock down for a couple of days, you know, because we all got to do our part. Back to hydroxychloroquine. You know, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin had decades of safe data on it, and it's clear for anyone to see on the US VAERS system and the Australian database of adverse events notification. It's all there, you know. It's really, really safe medication. And the fact that there was no, you know, we in Australia, I think the first jab was given February 2021. There was no treatments prior to that. Honestly, we're just telling people to go home with this extinction level event virus out in the world, and just told people to go home. If you've got the possibility of medications doing some kind of help, and we know they're very safe, why didn't the TGA and the government just allow doctors to prescribe it? I forget who said it before. It's because once people would have seen that they actually work, no one's going to be taking an experimental jab.
Absolutely.
And I still have people coming to me today saying they're not experimental jabs. Well, I've just brought up the TGA's website, and from the most recent one on this page is the 17th of February 2022. Right down the bottom, it's talking about rolling submissions from sponsors on the safety data. The TGA says that they'll make an evaluation of each vaccine once they've received a complete data package from sponsors. We have not yet received a full data package from any company. How much more experimental does it need to be?
Yep.
So,
yep.
Well, and there's a complete conflict of interest, which is plain as day. Why the government is relying on Pfizer and BioNTech and all the others to provide their own safety data is just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous concept and should never have been allowed. I mean,
like when you dig into the TGA website and have a good read through it, it says stuff like they don't do any of their own safety testing. You know, they'll just take the data from a company, and they'll even give the responsibility to, say, the UK, the European Union, or US administrators. If they've made a decision on one of the COVID jabs, TGA just takes it straight away. So when I saw that Novavax had been approved in the European Union, I said to friends, well, here we go. It'll be out here anytime soon now. We're not actually doing the studies and testing it ourselves. They're just taking the word from someone else.
Yep, that's right. And we do know that from the Freedom of Information request that the TGA just went through and did not even look at the Pfizer patient level data, nor held any committees to do that before they provisionally approved that vaccine in Australia. They just took the FDA's word for it. This is an idea of compartmentalization and being promoted to your level of incompetence that is entirely unacceptable. It gives all of these bureaucrats and these politicians the right that they can just look away at that exact moment and things get through the net, which is exactly what we're seeing here. And the idea, Quinton, that you said, that we're referring back to what Michelle said earlier, that the vaccine once there's any other treatment out there, it cannot get granted emergency approval. That's the purpose of it. It can only be there if there's no other choice, then you get the experiment. So this was clearly a cover up from day one. Some quick points I just want to make, where it came up earlier, Michelle, where you said that a UA candidate who had been double jabbed required some ivermectin to help them out. I want to make the point that there you go, everyone watching the United Australia Party. People are vaccinated, have taken the vaccines in good faith. So anyone who dares call this party an anti-vax party, or any of us anti-vaxxers, is simply out there to vilify good people, and it's unacceptable. We won't wear that label anymore. It's over, and that includes you, the media, when we finally get in front of your faces and explain our policies in the future.
And Jason, I'm happy to say it's Mary Jane Stevenson, Stevens, sorry, who's running for Redlands for UAP.
For Bowman.
A nurse. And as she would explain, and she's happy to tell anyone, blindly took the vaccine so she could keep her job, and was so injured she thought she was going to die.
Yeah.
Horrific. Like a stabbing knife in her head for days and days and days on end, could not move off her bed, and said to her husband, I think I'm going to die.
I took two so I could see my family, and I was floored 3 days. Just floored in bed.
Wow.
And I went, okay, well, now we get to see our family. Guess what? No. So even even the ones that took it, like we're the most compliant society. Australians are just the most beautiful people. And here we go. They just changed the goalpost over and over. And I realized then that we are never going to comply our way out of this.
Cannot comply out of
I've got members who have had the COVID jab, but they're more about, pro freedom of choice. They're still saying, well, I got it because I wanted to travel interstate. I wanted to see family in hospital for whatever reason. But they're saying people shouldn't be forced into this to keep their job. It's the threat of starvation and bankruptcy. If you lose your job, you're not being able to provide for your family.
Exactly. That's the ultimate coercion.
Yep, well said. And you're hearing that from military, and you're hearing that from police, and you're hearing that from lawyers, for those of you watching right now. Now, what I find that really bugs me about all of this stuff is that they failed with the QR codes. They admitted they were using it under false pretenses, Dominic Perrottet in New South Wales, because people were so scared they just had to check in, even though they're never going to get used. The QR code system failed. It was an invasion of privacy. It was a breach of so many privacy laws in our country. And then we moved on, and we got the vaccine passport that was trialed in New South Wales from that period of October 13 to December 1 that got blown out to December 15. And clearly you don't just do that for 2 months and have nothing to become of it. And now we arrive at a brand new way of reintroducing it, which is everyone's least favorite subject, but of which all of us have got something to say, and that is digital ID. I'm going to reverse the clock this way. Quinton, you go first this time, and just give me your thoughts on digital ID and why it is that it's such a big issue for those of us who are obviously supporting freedom, which has somehow been twisted to become the new F word today. If you say freedom, which we saw on the ABC last week, the UAP candidate down in Victoria was handing out free hats, and the ABC lost their minds with a headline that said the UAP accused of targeting the elderly, the non-English speaking, and children with their free hat program, and led one woman to say that her child was given a hat without her consent. This is wokeism. This is wokeism losing their minds, and they've got nothing better to do. So, Quinton, digital ID, give this one your best shot.
Yeah, I saw that story about the handing the hats out, and I was actually at Fernvale Markets on the weekend with Liz, and I mentioned it to her because I was handing out hats as well. So I was trying to bribe votes from the locals
hot.
at Fernvale.
It was seriously hot, and his hats went down a tree. So,
but the digital identity bill, it's in line with a lot of things. The cash ban that the government tried to put in a few years ago, $10,000 cash limit that a lot of good people that I follow, they put in submissions and they got that squashed. But the government takes slow incremental steps, encroaching on our freedoms all the time. And this is just another aspect of that. So, you know, if once you're tracked everywhere you go, or you need to prove, you know, your ID everywhere you go, or it's going to be aligned with your check-in everywhere you go, and then you'll have your digital wallet. You know, it'll come down to, oh, well, you know, we've seen what you've been doing and where you've been going, and maybe we don't approve of the purchase you're about to make. So the thing is, we don't know how these policies are going to evolve over time. There may be some really good reasons behind it, which I'm not aware of, but why they want to put it in. But we don't know how it's going to evolve over time. If we get a really even more tyrannical government in place, how are they going to use this against the people? So I think the digital ID, and actually it's already been in place for a while for anyone who runs their own company or manages their own self-managed super fund. You need a digital identity now for that, to manage those companies. So it's already been brought in for people who manage a company, and by the time it gets rolled out to everyone else, you know, it's this slow incremental step. People go, well, I've already got one of those, so, you know, what's the big deal?
Yeah, well said, Matt. What's your legal standpoint on digital ID?
Oh, Jason, you got me on the hop there. I haven't got a considered one, not my, but privacy is, well, it is about privacy.
Yes.
Now, with technology, we spoke about it the other day, it's a double-edged sword, just like the law, technology is as well. Right now, we have the tech for us to completely free ourselves from interference of government. So, you know, if you take the famous Satoshi Nakamoto 2008 white paper that's revolutionised the world, really, you can watch Bitcoin transactions take place, billions of dollars worth of transactions without any participation by a government or a bank. We have decentralized exchanges, and we have privacy coins. So it can be, we do have the technology available right now to have a system where privacy is paramount, as it should be. It should be. But the other side of that coin is the crypto coin is this micromanagement of every aspect of our lives, every minute of our lives. Soon, the way things are going, we will not be able to concede without permission, and you'll be slated for termination at the will of some AI machine. I mean, that's not that far-fetched. That's the road that we're being taken down. But what we have now, with crisis comes opportunity. So we have the opportunity now to really push back on this agenda. And it is a full-on assault on ordinary liberties. It's an assault on the family. It's an assault on personal responsibility. It's an assault by a global agenda for a one world government. It's plain as day. It's advertised to us regularly. The global reset, own nothing and you'll be happy. So on the other side of that, we can also participate in the great resist. Okay, now I can tell you what I think is the genesis of the pivot point in this balance. And that is when someone says the government should do something about that. There's no more disempowering statement that anyone could make than the government or someone should do something about that. That's just giving all your endeavour to someone else. You're devolving your personal responsibilities. And what we've got now is a continuation of that. So how do we fix it? We just have to resist. It's up to ourselves. We are creative beings beyond what we really can comprehend. Well, we have a destiny that we can envisage. We just need to go have the courage to go and grab that. What I would really like to see is a goal process that actually does not have any representation, a fully decentralised parliament where everyone can participate in the makings of the laws. That technology is not that far away. But there's some of my thoughts.
Yeah, look, well said. There's a big thing on the global agenda that the idea of dismantling society to introduce a one world government is the idea of taking away someone's responsibility, almost as if to make it so you surrender your responsibility. And you made that point there, the government's got to do something about it. So what we're seeing today is the world's being divided into this 70-30 situation, which I'm going to come to at the end of the event today. And I'm just going to plant this seed for everyone. The last segment of the show in about 15 minutes time, we'll commence it there, is I want to get your thoughts for a big picture, so I can plant that seed. But that's kind of where it's coming from. But over to you, BJ, for your thoughts.
Yeah, look, interestingly enough, Craig Kelly, the leader of the UAP, posted recently, and I'm just going to read it out because it says it all perfectly about digital identity. He tells us that Labor and Liberal combine and voted for allowing so-called trusted people and trusted organisations to access Australians' private data. So that's a bill that's just been passed recently. Another dark day in Parliament as we continue to follow the globalist authoritarian agenda of digital identity. Klaus Schwab would be happy. And, you know, it's like this incremental steps that our government keep taking. I mean, what does trusted people and trusted organisations mean? Who can trust them, and who makes the decision that they are trusted and that our private information is being given to them? I mean, we know that the pharmaceutical companies, for example, have been sued over and over, millions and millions of dollars for causing harm in various ways for many, many years, unethical ways, and yet we still let them operate. In my industry, in counselling and psychology, if an individual person is unethical and breaks the code of conduct, they're deregistered. They're not allowed to practice anymore because it's unsafe for the vulnerable public. But we get big pharma companies continuing to break the law, continuing to harm people, and continuing to be proven to harm people in the courts, and yet we let them continue on and we call them trusted. That's absolutely ridiculous in my view. And the digital identity thing is just a part of that, and the next step towards, controlling us completely.
Michelle.
Absolutely. I think, we're living in an inverted world where, the media and our government will make things sound really rosy and amazing with their linguistics around it. And people think, oh, yeah, that's great, and it's not. So I think we need to, as Matthew said, take more personal responsibility and invest some time in researching, like Senator Antic in Parliament, I think it was last week, amazing speech all about the global reset and Klaus Schwab and how it's this, vile sort of globalist, what it means is when you own nothing and are happy, that means the state owns everything and you are a slave to the state, and that's called communism. And so we don't live in a country that wants to go down that route. So I think people need to take some time and do their own research and stop watching. As I watch a lot of Hoodie. I love Hoodie, and he'll say, stop watching My Kitchen Stinks or I Married That Dickhead, whatever's on TV, and get on and watch some of the senators speaking in Parliament and get to know the political system and how you're being manipulated by the media, who I absolutely would be my first thing if I was ever elected, to bring in legislation that if you are lying and not giving you're lying on national television and giving your opinion, or you've found to be paid, and you're not doing your journalistic duty to give a balanced overview of an issue, then you need to be prosecuted and jailed. It's horrific. And unfortunately, Australians have fallen in this trap of just sort of taking these packages that have been delivered to them in a nice bow and thinking that that's good. So the digital identity bill is the same thing. It's part of the whole process of this global movement of the Great Reset, or the New World Order, New World Order, New World Order. I don't want a New World Order. I don't want to live in that world. So it sounds nice, New World Order. No, it's demonic, and it's not in the best interests of people's personal liberty and having the government out of their family life, their doctor's appointments, and their businesses where they should not be.
Liz. I'll just unmute.
Oh, you're muted.
Mute. There we go.
Gotcha.
Sorry, going back to what Quinton said earlier, him and I were actually talking about this at Fernvale Markets the other day, and we've got the farm, and obviously as company owners, it's been coming a long time. The relationship access manager, now any business owner knows all about this. It's a nightmare. And it's been in for the last couple of years. Now, you can't deal with the tax office. You can't deal with a bank. You can't do any of these things with BAS without this random access manager. It is digital identity. And it is the forefront of what they're going to make us do. If we actually let this go through, if our politicians, and if we're not there to stop it, let it go through, everybody's going to be inflicted with the same amount of scrutiny that these business managers have been. They want everything. They want your last financials for the last 5 years. They want your birth certificate, driver's license, Medicare card, and they've got a little data bank where they will look at you and verify all those numbers on all those documents. Now, I was reading something on biometrics, and again, talking to Quinton, we've actually got another candidate in Blair too, Lib Dems. And so we all get together and talk about these instances or these problems. And we were talking about how if you forget a password, you get to reset it. You can't reset your biometrics. Once they've actually got your face, and if it is hacked, then you are out. That is it. You can't actually go get yourself a new face. You can't do anything. So if you are hacked in a way that your identity, not just your birth documents and all that sort of stuff, is taken, they have actually hijacked you as a person. I don't want all that information and all that power given to someone else. I would much prefer to go back to where we had to present a document. That would be okay with me. I know some people think it's great to have a chip in your hand that they've been doing in Sweden so that you can scan yourself as you go through. That's all great if you're towing the line. If for some reason you decide not to tow the line at a future point in time, how do we get out of that? I watched a horrible movie a week ago. It was a short film about how you couldn't start your car. It was Palmetto, I think it was, one of the short films. It was an Australian short film. It was awesome, but really scary. He couldn't start his car if you swore. And they were using citizens to dob people in. And those persons that were dobbing people in were actually getting credits for their services to society. It is a very dangerous road that this digital identity is heading down. They've already been completely divisive with the mandates and the vaccines, and they're ripping our community apart because a divided community is much easier to control and lead in times of fear. So if we are an ununited community, it is so much easier for the government. But I am dead against, as is One Nation, and I know UAP, Lib Dems, dead against this digital identity.
Yep, there you go. Look, guys, we're soaking up the time quickly, but I know there's lots to talk about. What I'm going to do now is just update you where we're going to go. I'd like to go around the table on economy. I'd like to go around the table on preferential voting and then on final thoughts. So we'll try and keep our responses to under sort of 90 seconds to maybe 2 minutes if you need to get going. But I know people have to get going. So we'll go around the table quickly on economy. I'm going to throw this random so we can get a spark from everyone. I'm going to hit BJ up first. Economy, what are your thoughts? You're muted.
Yeah, great, thanks. Look, I really believe that the economy needs to be boosted, and we need to do something about the debt. That's the biggest, I think, the biggest threat to Australia right now is the debt that the government's put us in. They sort of give with one hand and then they take away twice as much with the other, and that's in a lot of areas, but including that. So for me, you know, we're just about to announce some policies, UAP, about what we think we should do about that debt. So that's the biggest thing for me, is to fix the debt and to have a plan so that we don't pass on those trillions of dollars of debt onto our future generations and hamper Australia. Well
done. Liz, to you.
I believe we need to kickstart our economy. It has been decimated with this COVID mismanagement. My parents paid 21% interest rates. It's been rock bottom for a long time. I actually believe that they will start to rise, and people have got their backs to the wall now. Imagine what will happen if they can't work because of these mandates. They can't do this, they can't do that. We're probably not going to get a time to talk about mental illness, but it all ties in together. Yeah. The economy is just one part of the massive picture. We need to actually bring our resources back to Australia, kickstart Australian jobs, protect Australian industries, and stop sending everything overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Quinton.
I've been following it with just my own personal interest for a number of years now. And anytime the RBA would come out, this is like as far back as 2014, saying, oh, you know, we're going to raise rates, we're going to raise rates. I kept saying to family, no, we're going to go to zero, because government seems to think they have all the answers for managing economy when it's really just the free market. Just get government out of the way and allow business to do business, and people want to do commerce. It's not the government's job to make all these jobs. They generally just make more public sector jobs anyway. But get out of the way and allow the private sector to flourish.
Yeah.
With a strong middle class, allow people with more money in their back pockets wanting to spend more, and that will just drive more job creation. So, and now we're at a point now where we're at ultra low interest rates for a number of years, like Liz touched on, and the RBA's forced into a situation now where they need to raise rates to fight the inflation that's coming from all the debt we've created. Yeah. So they don't want to do it because they know that it's going to destroy the housing market, but they're forced to do it, and people aren't prepared for what's coming. Like, Aussies don't have $500 saved for an emergency. What are they going to do when their mortgage interest payments have gone up $2,000 a month? You know, so it's a big shock coming.
Matt.
This is serious business, what we're talking about here. It goes to the very survival of our country. That's the point. That's the situation I think we find ourselves in. I would approach salvaging Australia. I think first we need to bring it all back to a firm base and just start from our strengths, and we need to cut any free trade agreement, free trade that undermines Australian society, that undermines our manufacturing. We need to build from the foundations up. I believe that the debt, I mean, that it is by design to some degree, because when you indebt the population, it's an apparatus of control. I've got some ideas on how we can some fundamental just some simple fundamental changes to how we do some certain things to start on that path. The first initiative I would like to see is to completely remove income tax and take that burden off the working class. There's no, the thing about tax, when you say let's remove income tax, people will say, well, how are you going to pay for something? But they misconceive what tax is. Tax doesn't create wealth, doesn't create any money. It simply takes money from the person that earned it and puts it somewhere else under the threat of fines or jail. Okay, so I've got a philosophy that the person, and this is a gap philosophy, the person that earned that dollar should be the person that says where that dollar is first spent. The same amount of money remains in the system, so services are still able to be paid for. But so we're only limited by our own creative thought on how we can bring some of that money in circulation into a consolidated revenue to pay for some services. It shouldn't be placed on the backs of working families, working people. The benefits that would flow from that, having more, well, for instance, you remove layers and layers of administration. You remove the need for policing and compliance, and straight away you get some dividends there. If you simply had a set and forget transaction tax or something like that, something simple, it's from the activity of the economy and people will have a lot more money in their pockets and more freedom. There's the second initiative I would like to see, and it goes to housing, is to actually remove the commercial banking from residential owner-occupied mortgages and give the Australian society access to its own reserve bank, access to either bonds issued by the Treasury or to the cash rate of the Reserve Bank. When you conceive this policy, and at GAP we call it ROOM, residential owner-occupied mortgages. When you conceive this, you can see that there's actually, that the banks actually bring no benefit to the residential mortgage market, none whatsoever. And we all know that our big four banks are largely owned by international banks. So the money that they are earning on interest is going offshore. When if we are able to get the big banks out of the residential mortgage market, then that money stays in their family budget. It stays in the community. So they're two rebuilding initiatives that GAP has, and I believe it's kind of a philosophical standpoint where we support the family. The family unit is the keystone, and society grows out from the family unit.
Okay, we're thanks, Matt. We're getting right to the end, and everyone needs to go and meet their commitments. Michelle, I'm going to cross to you for your quick thoughts on economy and also for your final thoughts. And we'll try and keep this to 2 minutes each because everyone's got to get off. And as soon as you're done, if you need to bail, then please do. But it's been a terrific an hour and a half on today, and this will be processed out there for your social media, etc., to get out to your electorates, etc. Thanks everyone for being on the program. Michelle, quickly to you with your thoughts on the economy and also your final thoughts as we head into it looks like maybe sometime this week we're going to find out when the polls are going to be set.
Yes, thanks, Jason. I agree with Matthew. Our banking system is completely broken. It's a Ponzi scheme. You know, our banks can lend out 27 times the money they actually hold by deposit holders. They make money on money that they don't have. And as they're owned by international corporates, that's another issue. Why do corporates in this country, even owned by people like Gina Reinhardt, who have offices in Singapore, pay 5% tax there and nothing here? Why are the royalties from the stuff she pulls out of the ground, we see cents in the hundreds of dollars in profits? It's you know, this government has crushed small business. So I would be rebuilding small businesses. I'm a small business owner. You might say micro. I have 1 or 2 people who work with me, but the businesses I support around me with my income, I've had the freedom to choose what I do and not be vaccinated. The government has crushed small business because they want everyone in a job. They're easy to control and it's easier for them to be controlled. So I would heavily support small business and ensure that government is focused on taxing particularly foreign national corporates who take all of their profits and taxes and don't pay anything in this country for the money they make here.
Thank you. Liz, your final thoughts?
We need a complete change of government. We need to vote the majors last. We need to get some fresh blood in there and actually get this country back to what I remember 40 years ago, when we had the freedom to do what we wanted and weren't so over-regulated that it is almost impossible to live.
BJ.
Yeah, look, I think that the Liz bringing up about the preferences, I wanted to just quickly mention to people that you are the ones that control your preferences. And so to remember that all your votes do count, and that, you know, we're working together with the freedom parties to be able to remove the current government and to destroy the duopoly so we can get some new people, fresh blood in there. And I'm reading a book at the moment called Deconstructing ScoMo. And in the first forward of the paragraph, he talks about that all the politicians we have at the moment are poll-driven politicians. They're keeping people happy. They look at the polls. They do what they think is necessary to stay in power. What we need is a whole change. And I believe that people from the freedom-friendly parties are value-driven politicians. We have values, we have integrity, and we're standing up for Australia and we're standing up for the Australian people. And that's what we want to see, values-driven politicians. It's not a dirty word, politician. It's just unfortunate that it's been painted so badly by poll-driven and self-serving politicians, but we want a whole new blood in there. And so hopefully that'll happen in May.
Quinton.
I'm very optimistic for the future. Either we win and form government now and we're able to change things for the better, or we don't, and the majors win and they end up pushing everyone to the abyss, and that's when everyone wakes up and things change. I don't think the majority of people who aren't awake yet will just blindly go into the stuff we've mentioned today. I think no one wants to live their life that way. Everyone inherently wants freedom and to be left alone. So I think even if the majors win, we're still going to have a change, and that's going to be great for everyone involved. So like I said, I'm optimistic. Everyone in my electorate, all the freedom parties, Liz, myself, Michelle, we're working together really great, and we can do that at a larger scale in the government. So, you know, people need to just see what we're able to achieve.
Matt, your comments, and I'll conclude.
Thank you, Jason. Look, just to be really quick, the major parties, the duopoly, the agenda parties, they've delivered over decades nothing but destruction and chaos. They are the least qualified to fix their mistakes. So vote them out.
Look, well said. Look, thank you everyone for watching our show today. I want to make the point that truth is the authority, and authority does not hold the mortgage on truth. They have been exposed by some very, very qualified people that you're watching today. And if you are watching this video and you're seeing me speak right now, it's likely that you are in the seat of Paterson and you've come through somewhere in the last few days as we approach this big election. But you'll notice that my slogan is very simple. It's coal, homes, jobs, and kids. And if we don't pay attention to what really matters and get diverted, then it is only us that we can blame if we haven't made a decision where we often say, oh my goodness, do we have to vote again? Why do I have to vote? Nothing ever changes. Well, thank you for paying attention and realizing that's the reason you found this, is because you are sick and tired of what's going on and you've decided that it is time for a change. I hope that you're able to look at all the candidates here and realize what they have to offer. Check out their Facebook pages, their websites, their party websites, and if you can, get involved, join the conversation at jointheconversation.net.au and realize that your pocket change can make a real difference, and you can contribute in a way that you may just drop 25 flyers in your local street, and that will be enough, because one vote is all it takes to change the world. Thank you everyone for participating today. Quinton, BJ, Liz, Michelle, Matthew, on behalf of Rebecca and the team at Join the Conversation, what a thrill it is. And I tell you what, we can change the world, and it just takes one person to make a difference. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next event at Join the Conversation.
Everyone.